I have never had a staff member intentionally
Yeah.
cross the line.
Yeah.
It's just, sometimes you're in a parent-teacher conference, you're in something and you're talking and all of a sudden they start to shit and you're just like,
Yeah.
get away. It's never, in 6 years, it's never been an intentional, conscious, I'm going to use this to
Right.
get this.
Right.
Never. Our staff is better than
Yeah.
that. But,
Good people.
it just, like I said, you've been dealing with the same folks because your kid's in the system and you've been dealing with them for years and years and years. Sometimes
Yeah.
people get comfortable, but yeah, it's never been a problem.
Right.
Just a conscious awareness.
Right.
Maintain.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff we're talking about now is in the board function tab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Policies in there and talking about that. And I know for,
That has typically been part of that opening session as well.
Yeah.
It's like the overall function, they didn't really do that yesterday. I was really surprised by that.
Unless it was in the new member board boot camp, that was before it, that we
I
didn't
don't know.
get there for.
I know for me, the most important thing, and probably even out of this whole binder, but definitely this section, is in the first page of operating principles that talks about leadership roles.
Mhm.
And the first one is, for NKSD board directors reviews and suggests what, and then NKSD superintendent decides how.
Yeah.
Like that was the hardest thing for me to realize, and it was really helpful when we went through that, through our onboarding to do that, is that, we decide the what, the big picture, and then the superintendent, goes and executes the how we're actually gonna do that.
Right. And I think that was, in the WSSDA, was already part in the online training stuff that they talked about that.
Yeah.
a bit of it.
It's 1620 is the policy and procedure set for that, but I think a big part of districts working well is a good working relationship between the board and the superintendent, and having an understanding about who does what and what does that look like, and that it will always be in evolution and in discussion, but I think part of it is just being really clear around that and having questions. And I have felt over the years, especially when we've been, I think in like evaluative discussion, that's usually a time where we'll kind of talk about how that's working, when they're working on evaluating me, and I can articulate any concerns or frustrations I have in that process, and then the board is able to articulate any concerns or frustrations they have in the process. But typically each year in the summer, as we look at my goals and board goals, we'll go back to 1620 and just kind of refresh that together as a group and just make sure we're clear on, we put the words on the page, but then we just make sure we have the same meaning of those words, and that it's and so it requires some regular, consistent revisiting just to be sure that we're functioning in the same way on that. And again, it's an ongoing process, and I've said before, I'm always open to feedback on that and very willing to talk with the board about how to adjust course if necessary. And this is based largely on policy and law, so we just have to be sure we know operationally who does what and how that looks and feels.
And it's a weird relationship that we're all 20% the boss of one person, and that's the only employee we have. That's everyone else works for her, not us. And so and that was a issue before the current situation, where there were board members who had staff they would go to, particular staff that they would each go to, and some went to the superintendent, some went to and so no, we go through. And if there is a reason to email a particular staff, like we gotta tell Corey something, basic, here's my claim or whatever, just letting her know, hey, but just that relationship too, and like one of the mind shifts I went under in the first, I wouldn't say 6 months, first year, was because you come into it and it's like, oh, you gotta do all this stuff and stuff, but it was also she is my employee. There's obligation there, which includes how's she doing, is how things go, and what's everything that someone who works for you, you're supposed to. You don't necessarily think about that when you're running for office, that you have this responsibility to the superintendent as their boss, that that's your employee. So that was a weird kind of, it took a little while, and then once I was like, right, then it all shifted, and it was so, You know, then it was the responsibility to and for mindset versus gotta come in and do stuff, you know, so it's different. And that weird 5-to-1 ratio is just, I don't know that it exists in a ton of places.
It does not.
Yeah. And then, you know, you have a person
It
who
is
spent
very
their entire
unusual.
career learning to do a job very well, and then you get a bunch of people who have no background in what they do, come in and now have to tell them how to do it. It's a very weird dynamic. So, yeah, don't think you're gonna get it for a while. It takes, you know.
But I
I'm
think
still
at
working
the
on it.
heart of it though, and what I think again, what I've been grateful for is the level of communication. And so that's, if there is a question about, I'm thinking about this and I'm not really sure, is this us or is this you, or how does this lie out?
You just asked.
Just ask. And the other, I will just also say I've been very appreciative, and so you're aware, I tell my staff to report to me if they've had any communication with a board member. One of the things that we want to do is to build trust and maintain it, and the best way, you know, I think they said yesterday, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Well, clear communication around who's being talked to and when is the same. And so the staff it helps them not get put in a pinch point either. My first year, there was definitely some challenges with that, and it led to some serious problems and issues and made things a lot harder to get through. So we've really worked hard as a team, I think, to build the trust around each other, and they know that I support them and have their back. I also support all of you and have your back. But I'm kind of in that cantilever position of being your employee, but being the boss of the entire system, and there's a chain of command and hierarchy and positional authority that needs to be respected and valued for me to be successful, and it's the same for you to be successful. And I think Brene Brown talks about like hot wiring communications or hot wiring connections in a system. That's devastating organizationally for the culture when that happens. So I do ask for the board to let me know when they plan to speak with a staff member. If there's an email that I'm CC'd on it, just so that the staff is aware that I know that there's not a hot wire trying to happen somewhere in the system. I would say 4 out of 5 times when boards and superintendents start getting into trouble, it's because of something like that happening. And so we just keep it all on the up and up. We're very open with each other, and that's everyone from assistant principals up, just very clear around that. So
And that's usually IT related.
it's usually IT.
Yeah, and I will say I want to work with you too, because I am really familiar with a couple schools and not familiar with other ones.
Yes.
And I think it's really imperative,
Yes.
rather quickly, that I would like to
Yes.
kind of find time, I'll figure it out.
Yes.
That I go with you to kind of, I want to be familiar with what the insides of these schools that I'm talking about, making decisions about, are looking like, or feeling like when you know, having more
Absolutely,
of that.
and
I
I've
don't
done
have
that with
so.
all board members at different
Cool.
times, so I am out in schools a lot, and I'm always happy to have board directors join me on those visits and do classroom walks, and I'm very blunt during those walkthroughs. I think all 3 of you have been like
Yep.
on classroom walks with me, where I'm like, we're gonna go in here and there's probably we'll walk out, and then I'll be like, okay, well, we'll be having some follow-up on that, or you know, there's definitely a question, but then there's just some really great things that you see about like why we're trying to bend towards a particular literacy curriculum or math adoption or whatever it is that we're doing, and it is eye-opening. So absolutely,
It's
we can
imperative
look
I
at
see it in, you know, working with a working structure.
Well, and especially with the bond measure coming up, I mean, I know you're very familiar with Wolfley, but we probably need to do a walkthrough at Pearson and have you take a good look at that building.
Well, even any of the schools I consider very familiar with, it's been a while, right? So, it's not the same as what it was, even my kids are older now and different
Sure.
things. So I need a fresh set of like going into it with understanding all of that.
That's very easy to set up, and board directors know that if they wanna go out in schools, they can ask anytime and I'll go with them.
But yeah, I just, whichever list or priority, I don't care, but I would just be,
tell me.
I need to do that, so whatever we can set up and just figure out timing.
I would recommend,
My schedule's what I worry about more.
if you're gonna go ahead and do it now, plan on doing it towards the end of the year too, cause being in the job for 6+
Yeah.
months, like, you you lose focus
Yeah.
a little bit, and it's good to get back in the classroom and
Right.
see and interact students to remember that's
Yeah.
what we're doing this for.
So just so you know, I am looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
I will make sure to make that happen. I just-
If you can tell me
Yeah.
kind of your priority of where you wanna start,
Okay.
then I can start booking that out.
No.
It will require some flexibility on schedule because when I do book those, we've got a master event calendar for all the stuff going on in school, so
Yeah.
I try to avoid like big testing days.
Yeah,
Big event days.
for sure.
Sugar holidays.
Sugar holidays. So because
Pajama days are fun.
Right. The thing is, and it's still hard for me to, it's still hard for me to realize this because I am still a teacher at heart and like, I just like being around kids and being in the schools and I just, that's like my natural environment. It is very nerve wracking for people for me
That's
to
what I
walk
was
into
gonna
their
say
room.
too. I was
So
like-
it's just, it's hard for me still to realize that has that impact on them. So I want to set them up to have as little pressure as possible, because when the superintendent and 2 board directors walk into a classroom,
Absolutely.
that's a lot for a teacher, so, I try to just be really mindful of that also.
And the
Well-
little ones wanna know, say, who are you? Why are you in our room?
Yes.
What are you doing? Like,
Well, I mean, even my big thing is even just knowing the layout of the school, for example. It's
Yeah.
not even necessarily
Mhm.
the, nuts and bolts. I just need
Yeah.
to see, like, get a general,
Mhm.
like,
what was nice when we first instituted School Connections, we did it at the schools.
yeah,
And-
that's
and-
it.
And so there was a couple of them, that was the first time I'd had a chance to be in those
Yeah.
schools. Pearson was one.
Yeah,
And
I've never
I
been
wanted
to
to go, I just never had made it, and that was not a school I was familiar with, and so, yeah, it opened your eyes when you could actually see them, but, I mean, that stopped because of COVID, but, yeah, it makes a difference, and not just the school itself, when we visited Colesville Middle School the first time, we went through the portables, and we went through, cause I went through the classes, and I knew some classes, both my kids
Yeah.
went there, I knew the building, but I didn't go in those, cause my kids didn't have classes in those, and so, we saw the whole campus, so, yeah, it definitely helps.
Good segue, do you wanna talk about capital projects? I mean, do you want, cause
This
you're
is
gonna
really,
have to do it again.
this is your time,
Yeah.
well, no, that's my job, and so I would just
Yeah.
say the time today is, like, most of our discussion's been generated off of the open public meeting session, so that's the whole point, so we can branch into any updates that you want to get into, this is your time, so
Okay.
if we
Yeah,
wanna
I'll
talk
kinda
about
just-
capital program, or we wanna talk about anything else,
Is there a
that's
certain
up to you
tab you're
guys.
looking at?
I just, that was the one, we're going through all of these, we're
Well-
kinda hitting them, so I figured we'd do that, so yeah, let's just talk about capital projects real quick, just see if you have any questions.
Yeah, well, the next session's about to start in 5 minutes.
Oh, are we that? I wasn't thinking.
Yeah, the 3:20 starts, and it's 3:14.
It starts at 3:20.
Yeah, next one's at 3:20.
Okay.
So we could break and then just wait and do that when we get the final,
Yeah, I mean, what of these things, did you have any questions, or what's your
Well,
priority
since I
going
just
through?
got this, I don't have a ton at the moment,
Yeah.
so honestly, Rick's probably on a good point, is that really when there's 2 of us,
Mhm.
it'd be easier even for me, because the other person will think of things that
Mhm.
I maybe haven't, so it would save you all from
Mhm.
me and then them and 2 sets of questions. So I'm good with that, cause I would really appreciate having some time to actually go through and make my own little notes of where I need to ask the questions. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I'm good with that. Just cause I haven't had a chance to, right? Yeah, I wasn't supposed to digest it in 2 minutes, I don't.
You were.
Okay.
What do you
Well,
mean?
I failed the first
Come
test.
on.
But yeah,
That's why
once,
we're gonna go to sleep tonight.
yeah, well, I was awake for like 2 hours last night, so when I have some time, I'll just,
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that the important thing we got through kind of the board function, the board meetings.
Yeah.
Those
Right.
are the big ones.
Communication.
Yeah.
and then I feel like I need to know for this coming month, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And we probably just need to get our calendar out, quickly and kind of try to jot down some dates, in the next few weeks to get some things set.
Yeah.
I think what helped me the most is just realizing that on December 15th, you're not expected to know everything, like the answer that we said,
Yeah.
that's a great question, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
We'll
It's also
find
my
out some
favorite
more
one.
information, yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah, awesome. Well, as long as it's not a test on the 15th or anything like that.
Well, there's a test at the end of today.
I got this.
Yeah, you got
I
it.
got all the notes.
Yeah, you got the
Here,
open
I got
book.
her.
I
Okay.
think, well, I would say there are a couple of just generalized updates, which is I concluded, well, and Rachel helped with some of them, but we've concluded the informational updates to PTA groups, booster groups, and all the community organizations for the most part. We're I think in a pause on most of those sessions until January. And so in January, once again, there'll be a lot of evenings going out and sharing more information, and we're looking at hosting one in person and one virtual general informational session. It'll be exactly the same as what we've been doing over and over and over, but just offer it to.
Sort of more like a town hall style, or not really
It'd be
tied
more
to
of
it.
like a presentation and other questions, which is basically what we've been doing.
Just won't be tied to a specific organization, like, yeah, I like that. I think that just gives it greater.
Yeah. And I think aside from that, we are in the early throes of getting ready for 24-25. So I know that probably right after Thanksgiving, Rachel and Mike and I will be sitting down to look at preliminary numbers. That will be coming up in a January board meeting. So again, just when we know the fifth person for sure, we'll make sure that we've got some time set, because those reports can be pretty dense.
And I would say that's usually the second board meeting in January is enrollment projections.
Okay.
Come down with them.
And we'll start the budget process.
Well, even just knowing like some of these timelines, honestly, do you have like a skeleton timeline, sort of anything that
It-
can be shared? Is
We
it,
do
sorry,
board-
is it?
it's on the board, no, it's board agenda. Corey skeleton's out the board agendas, just basic skeleton for the year. So I think that might be,
Somewhere,
it's
yeah.
usually in there.
budget, there's a time.
It might be in there.
The budget tab has I would say that's the
Yeah.
big one, and that drives about 8 months of the board's life,
Right.
in terms of just what's happening at the meeting. So we follow a pretty consistent timeline on that. It sometimes will ebb and flow a little bit based on lunch, where the session is and what's happening. But we've been pretty consistent on that, over the last several years, and that cycle just dominates most of the work for.
There's a drop dead date, so we have to
Yeah,
be done
it's
by.
just helpful with all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I can kind of know where the focus is for
Yeah.
kind of what's the time that I have, so.
Alright, so a couple more session rounds for
Yep.
everybody, and,
Yeah. I'm going to strengthening supports for Native students.
alright,
Okay.
alright, well then,
Thank you.
Hold on.
have a good rest
My
of the
room first.
conference, yeah.
I'm gonna dump this.
Okay.
You mean you're going to put it in a treasured spot
I'm
to
gonna
refer
go
to
dump it in my
many,
room.
many times?
Right on my
about
bed.
this.
Treasure.
Is the meeting adjourned now then?
It's not a meeting, it's a work session, so we don't have to formally convene or adjourn, but we're wrapping up, yes.
Yeah.
Are you going to meet again today?
No, they're going to session, so
Are
we'll
you
be
going
done.
tomorrow?
They're going to session all morning.
We have separate sessions that we're.
Kim, you know by now, we post if they're gonna meet, so we don't wait a lot.
It was posted, so.
No more meetings.
So you don't-
There'll be a quorum because we'll be at meals together, so
Yeah.
they'll be sitting in quorum, but there's no meetings.
Well, this was posted as a special meeting.
Yeah, but yeah, no,
Okay.
the rest, no. No, breakfast.
I just got my glasses out at the
Oh,
end. I should
yeah.
have had them earlier.
It's hard to, like, that is small print.
It is, yes.
I mean, like,
I can still do pretty well in the daylight, but when it gets
Yeah.
to be dim light or
I
nighttime,
can't
that's
see
when I really
anymore,
start
it's like in
to.
the last 3 months, all of a sudden, I can't read, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's by the end of the day usually for me if I'm on the computer.
Mhm. That eye strain
Well,
too,
then
yeah.
I will lay in bed and read sometimes. My husband's
mean,
like, you're
yeah.
not supposed to read in the dark. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
There's
Too when I do a lot of my reading, and I unfortunately from my phone, I mean, whatever I'm reading, I'm on the phone, so I'm like, oh no, this is so bad, I'm not supposed to.
I don't know how to do it on my phone yet, but on my computer I can do, listening to, it will read for me.
yeah.
It's a little monotone, but
Yeah.
sometimes if my eyes are tired, I use that on
Yeah.
the computer. I need to figure out how to do that on my phone too. In fact, let me
I do too. Yeah, no, that's a good.